excited, ladies and gentlemen. This is probably the moment you've been waiting for, the interview you've been waiting for.
We just fell in love with him from the minute he was born.
Jeff, say a few words.
I love you. Bye-bye.
Every step along the way, he picked himself up and was full steam ahead.
And I can always finagle my daddy into anything I want.
This child was going to be a gift to us.
You know, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we never pursued the answers. And that's really Jeffrey's voice. Can't you do something?
Just to clear things up, I'm Jam, Jeffrey Alan Modell, and this is Jam Talk.
I was 27, and I had started my own jewelry business. And a woman who was friendly with my parents came to me and said, I've got a number for you. So after a week or two, I called the number, and she sounded very nice, and then I said, can I ask you a question? How old are you? I mean, you sound like about 12. And she said, oh no, are you kidding? I'm 18 years old. I went to my friends and I said, sounds like a really wonderful girl. We had a wonderful conversation, but she's 18. And my friend said, 18 becomes 19. 19 becomes 20. 20, 21, call her back.
The next morning, I went to class. I was in college, and they said, so, how was the date? How was the date? I said, I'm going to marry that guy. I am so in love with him.
I was completely smitten. I didn't care anymore that I was old and she was young.
9 months after their first date, Fred Modell proposed to Vicki Abrams. On September 7th, 1968, the night before their wedding, Fred wrote a letter to his bride that would be prophetic. The challenge to both of us lies ahead. If there are setbacks, as I guess there must be in life, we must call on our most tremendous source of strength, our enduring love for each other.
I was 21 when I first found out I was pregnant. I was so excited. It was a dream come true.
September 25th, 1970, it was thrilling to me. I said, I got a son. That was just phenomenal.
He was the most beautiful, beautiful baby with these big blue eyes and had a little brown hair, and he was absolutely spectacular. He was a small baby. The doctors told us he will plump up and get chubby very, very quickly, and that he was healthy.
I can't wait to play ball and to take him to games and to do all the stuff that young boys like to do, and I could share with him.
He was absolutely perfect until he was 10 months old. And that's when everything started to go wrong.
In the summer of 1971, Jeffrey developed an alarmingly high fever and jaundice and was immediately hospitalized. Doctors discovered that there was a problem with his immune system, leaving Jeffrey dangerously vulnerable to bacteria and viruses. Worse still, doctors knew little about how to treat him.
Our world was shattered. On the outside, he looked so beautiful, he was so perfect. But on the inside, his immune system was so seriously flawed that it was, they said, like a time bomb.
And I said, there must be something you can do. You think, is this the only kid in the world who's got this?
They told us that they were not sure about the prognosis, that maybe if we crossed our fingers and we took really good care of him, that we could be lucky and maybe he would outgrow it.
Jeffrey Modell had been born with a confusing and mysterious disease called primary immunodeficiency. His body wouldn't manufacture enough of the white blood cells that we all need to fight off common illnesses, which meant a cold or ear infection or pneumonia could easily and quickly become deadly.
Primary immune deficiency is when the body's immune defenses that fight battles on an ongoing basis to keep us healthy are inherently broken in some way, shape, or form.
It's something that you did not get because you had a virus infection or you were on a medication. It's something that you actually were born with. We call that primary.
When I was in med school, the immunology textbook was, I think, 82 pages long. It was one of the shortest ones and one of the easiest courses that we took because we knew very little.
I still have vivid memories saying goodnight to him. He was perfectly fine, and then I would always fear the next morning. I almost didn't want to get out of bed and take a look at him because you could see right away if he had a fever, if he wasn't well.
Despite knowing their son was in constant danger, the Modells let Jeffrey live his life and adjusted to a life of uncertainty.
It was great. I came home every day and I spent time with him and I threw him up in the air and we sang songs together, and he was just a joyous kid with a wonderful personality.
We have just finished breakfast. Mom has had 3 cups of coffee. We're on our way to Montmartre again today, but we're not going to take that because we don't want you listeners to get tired and leave and get bored and have no fun. Have a good day.
While they enjoyed Jeffrey's healthy moments, they still had no answers for his sick ones. A void which left them feeling helpless and alone.
It was extremely isolating in that we never met another family. He never met another child with primary immune deficiency. So he thought that he was one in a billion people to have this disorder. One day he said, I just wish I had leukemia, because at least I would know what they could do for me or not do for me. This way, I have no answer. I have something that nobody's ever heard of.
I said, whatever the cost is, it doesn't matter to me. I want to get an answer.
We took Jeffrey all over the world for diagnosis. They shrugged their shoulders and said, we're just not sure exactly what it is.
So you'd say, well, gee, there's got to be a better response. And these were really giants in the field.
And the pain for both Fred and myself, as well as his doctors, was excruciating because he saw the best physicians in the world. He had a privileged life, a life with everything he could ever want, but we couldn't give him his health.
Jeffrey's illness didn't keep the Modells from wanting to expand their family, but they feared having another child born with this disease. After researching their family histories and finding nothing alarming, in 1973, Vicki gave birth to their second child, Lori.
She was beautiful, very beautiful. When we brought Lori home, I noticed that she did not follow sound. I took her to the pediatrician and I said, I'm really quite frightened. I think that Lori might be deaf. He said, I wish I could tell you she was deaf, but I believe that she's severely developmentally disabled. As she grew a little bit older, it became more obvious. In fact, we had doctors who said she would never walk or talk or even sit up.
In life, you're dealt a hand, and you're going to have some tough stuff. Sick child, a parent who's sick, a bankruptcy, a divorce. I mean, there's so many things that can just kill you. I mean, it was the 2 of us and 2 sick children. I said, we got to figure this one out. This is a tough one, but we got to figure this out.
Lori needed 24-hour-a-day care. To have people living with us would be very, very difficult because Jeffrey was ill too.
The Modells had to make a painful decision. They couldn't risk exposing Jeffrey to the germs that caregivers might bring into the house. But they wanted the best for Lori. They decided to place her in a residential facility that could provide her with with the care she needed.
But Jeffrey was very sorry to see her leave home. He adored her and always thought that she was the fragile one. I wouldn't have traded these children for any other child, but I doubted whether I would be able to have a healthy child. So I just steeled myself. I made myself as strong as I could. I had so much responsibility. And what about me? All my dreams, they were shattered. I had everything and I had lost everything at the same time.
While Jeffrey always recovered from his hospital stays, they still kept coming. Fortunately, Fred's successful jewelry business provided the means to continue seeking out the most innovative treatments and the best doctors. But it was the doctors at nearby Mount Sinai, one of the most prestigious hospitals in the country, that Jeffrey and his family would often turn to for help.
When I first met him, it was just a question of giving him antibiotics as he needed, and hopefully his intersections with medical care were just as brief as once a month for a few hours. But then things became much more difficult.
I had to do things and be a part of things that were not always pleasant, sticking him with needles, doing spinal taps on him, putting in chest tubes.
Life was a roller coaster. Every day, we never knew what we would wake up to. I slept at the hospital with Jeffrey all the time. Barry would come in and keep me company.
You got to know the parents of ICU patients, unfortunately, very well. One of our most important jobs was not only taking care of the patient, but making sure that the family were taken care of as well.
The children were all asleep, but the parents were pacing the halls and wished they were home, wished we could shower. It was very lonely.
I would go to work for maybe a half a day or something, then meet her up at the hospital, and we would talk and try our best to impact on this condition, but it was tough. I mean, we could only try the best we could do, never knowing what would lie ahead, except that we had each other, Vicki and I, that we had.
Jeffrey was a unique kid. As I learned in my career, a lot of children who deal with chronic illnesses tend to have a uniqueness about them. They are survivors and they push on, and Jeffrey was really the epitome of that.
He would say to us, "Mom, Dad, please do something. You went to college, you're smart. Please do something." Little did he know we were doing everything we could. Through it all, he thrived, he grew. We weren't going to let him live a life that wasn't normal. We made that decision early on.
We went swimming here and in Europe and other places. He played squash. I was in an athletic club in New York, and we played squash together. Put on the goggles, and he was hitting the ball. He was a good athlete. We played softball in the park. Of course, did a lot of boating, sailing. We went on cruises up to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and he was a great sailor. We gave him the helm, and he was doing it. He was just never paid attention to this disease. He had courage, he had strength, and he had very deep conviction about his doing things that he wanted to do. I think that was a big lesson for me. I was not cut out that way.
He had an incredible sense of humor. He would be laughing, he would be performing, he would be telling jokes. You would never know in a million years that he was sick.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jam Talk. I'm Jeff Modell, your host for this show. We did a man on the street the other day. I very bravely walked onto the streets of Manhattan in dark sunglasses, so of course no one would recognize me. And I just asked people that I saw on the street what they thought of our show. Ma'am, wait 1 second. Can you please tell me, what do you think of the show Jam Talk? Have you ever heard it? Oh, yeah, I've heard it many times. And that host, Jeff Modell, he's just so sexy. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
In the 8th grade, Jeffrey wanted to join his classmates for their annual whale-watching expedition in Cape Cod, but it would expose him to the cold and damp weather. His parents knew the risks, but refused to let the disease define him.
When we went to pick him up from the trip, there he was, like all dirty and sweaty. He had his big blue eyes, but they were watery, and his cheeks were bright red. He said, I had the best time of my life, and I feel great. And when we took him home, it wasn't so great. And then, of course, he ended up in the hospital. We always pretended everything was fine. I was almost afraid that if I admitted that he was so sick, that something bad would happen.
Over the next 2 years, Jeffrey's health began to improve. But it was a Princeton University football game in 1985 that gave the Modells hope that the worst was behind them.
So we went down to the Princeton game. He had brought a football. He says, come on, let's throw some passes. And he was really quite good. And we were throwing passes out on the football field during the halftime. He looked great. He felt great. He just was joyous. And I said to Vicki, and I never forgot this, I think it's behind him. Look at his face. Rosy cheeks, bright eyes, healthy, breathing well, throwing a long pass. I think it's over.
Unfortunately, within a couple of days, he became ill. We thought no matter how bad this hospitalization was, that he would bounce back again.
His pediatrician said, hey, this kid's had 9 lives already, and he'll have a 10th and an 11th and a 12th. Just hang in there.
So it was Thanksgiving, and then we were there for Christmas Day and New Year's Day.
And we started to sense we were in some real trouble.
I said to him, I know you think it looks really bad, and you're probably scared, but it's going to be okay, because we have each other. And I saw a tear come down from one eye. And that was the last conversation we ever had.
Jeffrey Modell died on January 7th, 1986. He was 15 years old.
We said our goodbyes, and then we left the hospital. Fred and I just kept walking. We were just, didn't know where we were and what happened. But all of a sudden, we were back in our apartment. I think we walked all the way. It was like 40 blocks. And it took a long time to realize what happened. Very long.
I never was ready, because I was sure at that football game it was a pneumonia. Sorry. But he was an amazing kid. And he never looked back. He never felt sorry for himself.
When he died, Fred asked me to accompany him to pick out a coffin. I don't have great memories of a lot of things, but I tell you, I have an extraordinary memory of seeing 20, 30 coffins and talking to Fred, should we do that one? No, let's do that one. Oh, Jeffrey would like this one. I mean, how often do you get to pick out a coffin for a 15-year-old?
I went to Jeffrey's funeral. It was just amazing to me how normal a life he had when he wasn't ill. You can hover and keep them protected in a way that doesn't allow them to grow. And I think that, in his short life, Jeffrey did the things he wanted to do because his parents allowed him to do those things.
It was really quite sad that Fred and I could not say Jeffrey's name to each other. We never, ever uttered the word Jeffrey.
I just said, let's try to get through these few weeks and then take a deep breath and see what's possible. And I think that's what we did, but nothing heroic and nothing courageous on my part. Jeffrey was the guy. He was the courageous guy. I tell you, I miss him a lot. You can tell probably, but I really do. He was my buddy.
I love you. I love you.
Jeffrey Modell's death shattered his family. But children with primary immune deficiencies, diagnosed and undiagnosed, had been dying for years, a fact that the global medical community was just beginning to understand.
In the 80s, we had very little immune deficiency-related basic science. So in order to get a grant, we would submit a grant for basic science in immunology, and then try and find a way to immunodeficiency.
By that time, we knew a few diseases. I would say we had few patients because we had very few resources to diagnose them. The mortality rate was relatively high.
One meets a lot of families who've lost a child because of a primary immune deficiency. Losing any child is a devastating event. Different people react in different ways, but quite a lot of people want to do something.
Your child's sniffles and earaches could be a whole lot more dangerous than you think. I mean, they could be deadly. It could be primary immune deficiency. I know you probably haven't heard of that, but I'd like you to meet a couple who unfortunately lost their child because of it. Please say hello to Vicki and Fred Modell. Good morning. You lost your son 6 years ago. Jeffrey was 15. How did that happen?
He developed a hepatitis-like condition, and it was at that point that he was hospitalized and checked further and diagnosed with primary immune deficiency. And from that moment on, he was well for long periods of time and desperately ill for many periods of time.
Did they tell you at the time they made the diagnosis that this could possibly be fatal? That's the thing that's so hard to understand, because it sounds like any number of children. It must be so frustrating, Fred.
Well, it's difficult, but what's inspired us is we've met a lot of families who, even since these past 6 years, are going through a lot of the same things we went through. They're isolated, they're alone, they're anxious, they're unsure, they don't know where to turn.
Cousins of ours came to us and said that they have neighbors that lost their daughter to leukemia. And now the parents feel so fulfilled because they started a foundation in her memory, and we would like you to start a foundation and do the exact same thing they did.
The year after Jeffrey's death, with the encouragement of family and friends, Vicki and Fred established the Jeffrey Modell Foundation in 1987. They had no idea if they would make a difference, but they knew they had to do something.
My goal was that we would find better answers to what took Jeffrey's life. If we could prevent even just one family from that, then it would be worth starting the foundation.
Our first board meeting was in June of 1987, and somebody said, one day this foundation is going to raise $1 million. And I said, you know, we have $500 in the bank.
The hope was to be able to spread the word. What would happen would be with these pediatricians, who were good doctors in every way, I'm assuming, didn't catch the signs, and the signs could be subtle. The sort of brief description was always the bubble baby, John Travolta movie. The hardest part for us was to sort of get your hands around what's the definition of what we're dealing with. It isn't something concrete where you say, well, they have this and we can fix it or we can't. This was much more complex.
It wasn't anything we knew about. The only thing as far as immune deficiency that we knew about was what everybody calls the bubble boy disease. And it was an education.
I think we all said, you know, of course we're on board, of course we will help you.
Throughout Jeffrey's life, Vicki and Fred consulted with the greatest immunologists of the time, each of whom contributed to keeping Jeffrey alive for 15 years. And when they established the Jeffrey Modell Foundation, those leaders helped set the agenda.
We decided to do a little brochure. Inside the brochure would talk about what primary immunodeficiency is and try to explain in simple terms what took Jeffrey's life, because it was a difficult set of diseases to describe. And so we did it simply. And then we said, well, who are we going to send this to?
We wrote everybody we knew and said, this is not HIV, this is not acquired immunodeficiency, this is inherited genetic immunodeficiency, and we lost our son. Will you help us?
Maybe it was beginner's luck, but we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in small donations. We decided to set up a fellowship fund at Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City.
Despite their efforts, children were still dying. Doctors had few tools for treating the disease.
One, as a physician, tries not to get involved very much with patients, but sometimes it's impossible. I remember one kid, and he developed a very severe, rare tumor, and he finally died. That was, for me, really incredible, because it was a sensation that I could have done more, but I did what I could.
I used to work as a young resident with some babies. They are very sick. And then I cannot do anything. They die. This is a catastrophe for the family. It breaks families. It really destroys lives. Not only of the kids that die, but think of a young couple. They get a baby, looks lovely, healthy. A few months, he's sick, he stays in hospitals and dies. And they get another one, and the same story happens. And they don't even understand why. I was heartbroken because I couldn't treat them.
With no cure on the horizon, the foundation next focused on raising awareness. Working with a medical advisory board and the American Red Cross, the Modells developed the 10 warning signs of primary immune deficiency, distributing it to pediatricians across the country.
The earlier you diagnose these kids, the better their life. This is how physicians will recognize a patient.
To think about primary immunodeficiency when there was a child or an adult suffering recurrent infections, which is still not always something a doctor thinks immediately about.
The 10 warning signs poster became absolutely a smash hit, not only in the United States, but every country in the world wanted to translate them.
Although the campaign was a success, it wouldn't reach every family in time.
Turn it, turn it.
From the day he was born, Christopher loved cars and anything to do with fixing them and driving them. There was nothing wrong with him, except that he got sick a lot. And the pediatricians, they just kept telling me he was fine. I had one pediatrician even tell me that I should seriously consider seeking therapy for being an overprotective mother. I was angry, very angry. I knew something was wrong.
Good. Take a shot.
By the time he was a toddler, Debbie's son Christopher had survived a countless number of infections. He had been hospitalized for nearly 60 days when he developed a fungal infection in his lungs. Christopher was almost 4 years old when he passed away on October 20th, 1999.
They disconnected all the machines. They removed all the tubes so that he could go peacefully. And they laid him in my arms. And the intensive care nurse stood next to me, and she continued to monitor his vitals until she could tell me that he had gone. But at least I got to hold him when he died. The only thing worth living for had just been ripped out of my arms. I didn't want to live.
It was only in the last 2 weeks of Christopher's life that Debbie would learn that primary immune deficiency is what would kill her son.
I was just so angry. I wanted to kill every single person that didn't catch this. And I knew that I could sue. I could take hospitals to court, doctors to court. I knew I would end up fighting, and I didn't know if I had it in me to fight anymore.
Devastated, Debbie's marriage collapsed. The pain was all-consuming until she had a life-changing meeting.
We sat for, I think, 6 hours. Fred and I both were absolutely heartbroken to hear her story. And that day we said, we don't want to hear another story like this.
I said, you know, Debbie, you're angry at the hospital. You're angry at the doctors. You're angry what they missed. And now we have a choice. If you want to educate, come with us. Come with us. And let's help the next family.
If I was ever going to find some form of peace in my life, I was going to have to help educate the world. I was going to have to scream as loud as I can and talk to anybody that'll listen to me and give me 5 minutes so that nobody else ever has to go through what I went through.
If only my doctor was more aware, I believe my son would be here today. Primary immune deficiency, it exists, and it is treatable, and we can save children. Thank you.
The Modells showed Debbie the way to turn her pain into purpose. They also realized that the best chance to prevent other families from suffering would mean pushing the research forward.
So in this period of time, I think that we've made some difference. I think there's more difference to be made.
Dr. Charlotte Cunningham-Rundles, who was Jeffrey's immunologist. She was really the first to say, let's get together like a think tank of the world's greatest minds in immunology. That's the only way we're going to make a difference.
So I said, oh, that's a great idea. Yo, I think we should do that. She said, well, do you have the money for that? I said, no, we don't have any money.
It would take 6 months, but the Modells eventually convinced the pharmaceutical industry to sponsor educational conferences focused on primary immune deficiency.
If you went to a conference when the Modells were there, you probably would come across them. They stood out from the crowd, let's put it that way. I think it was because they asked questions, and they were people who weren't satisfied with the status quo.
The Modell were discussing with many of us what they could do to help so that these diseases could be better recognized, better diagnosed, better treated.
Fred and I could not say Jeffrey's name to each other, but once we started the foundation, we had to say his name. One of the first times we spoke at the hospital, an adult patient said to us, aren't you just PR people? Don't you know that this is really serious? I had to gain my composure and to say to her, we are anything but public relations. We are here because we lost our son, Jeffrey, and we know the pain. We understand the disease, and we're here to hopefully try to create a different world for the patients. And then we became very proud to say his name.
But convincing people to care about, contribute to, and recognize what was believed to be a rare disease would pose challenges. So the Modells, hoping to find a new partnership, began lobbying lawmakers to fund more awareness and research for a disease that sounded eerily similar to another devastating illness.
HIV, AIDS, was the #1 immune deficiency on everyone's mind.
AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome.
The cause of the acquired immune deficiency syndrome is unknown, and there is no known cure.
263,000 Americans will be killed by this disease.
So we did get a slot on the Senate Appropriations testimony. I started my talk by saying, good morning, senators. I would like to talk about the other immune deficiency.
And the heads picked up and says, oh my God, do we have another epidemic? What is this about?
I got their attention.
About a year later, we went to the U.S. Senate to have resolution that would declare Primary Immunodeficiency Awareness Week. Remarkably, we only got an approval by 29 of the senators. And so we had a guy in Washington, and I said, a lobbyist, and I said, why wouldn't they sign this? And they said, because it needs you, both of you, you've got to break into teams and go around to every Senate office and tell this story.
We were given 2 or 3 minutes to describe everything that had happened to us over the 15 years of Jeffrey's life and the few years of the foundation.
The Modell family, Fred and Vicki Modell, unfortunately have suffered through the tragedy of losing a loved one to primary immune deficiency.
We kept going. Al D'Amato and Joe Lieberman were the 2 senators who led the charge, and we eventually got 100 senators to sign on to the awareness resolution.
I again want to thank my colleagues for supporting the resolution I introduced declaring this week National Primary Immune Deficiency Awareness Week.
What started as a fellowship fund at Mount Sinai soon evolved into the first Jeffrey Modell Center. Doctors wanted more support, so the Modells raised money to provide a place where physicians could learn and patients could be identified and treated.
So we started off with only 3 cities, in New York and Seattle and Boston.
Several doctors and pharmaceutical companies asked, could you do this at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia? Could you do it in Chicago? Could you do it in Dallas?
And soon, there were Jeffrey Modell centers across the United States. By 2007, the foundation also financed the building of the Jeffrey Modell Immunology Center at Harvard Medical School. To keep their vision growing, the foundation continued working with the government, partnering with pharmaceutical companies, and holding yearly galas.
It is you who have helped us lovingly create Jeffrey's legacy, and now you are helping us sustain it.
It was at the spring gala that they had every year. Vicki came up to me and put her arm through mine, and she asked me, "What's your dream for the foundation?" I said, "Well, I would want every single child born into the United States to be tested for primary immunodeficiency."
But a simple test was a complex idea. Scientists were continuing to discover many genetic mutations of the disease, making it impossible to screen for them all. So the Modells focused on severe combined immune deficiency, or SCID, the most deadly form of the disease. Being diagnosed with SCID meant a child was born with no immune system at all. Without medical treatment, their life expectancy would be less than a year. They learned there was an inexpensive and effective way to test newborns for SCID.
If you can diagnose and you can treat, and you can possibly save these babies who would die before their first birthday usually, how could you not do that?
So we went year after year to get newborn screening for SCID. We failed in the 2001, 2002, 2003, and on. And then in 2007, there was a meeting. And one of the government people said, in a very patronizing way, "Mr. Modell, we are very appreciative of what you and your wife are trying to do. But this is a rare disease, very rare disease. It is a question of the numerator and the denominator." I said, "Wait a second, let's look at the numerator. How many dead babies shall I bring to you? 1, 2, 5, 10? Tell me how many. When I hit the number, you'll pay attention to me."
Still, no federal agency would fund newborn screening for SCID. But that 2007 meeting did bring the foundation a new ally. In 2008, the state of Wisconsin and the Modells agreed to share the costs to sponsor a pilot program that would screen 10,000 newborn babies. A baby boy, Dawson Bornheimer, was identified and then cured with a successful bone marrow transplant on September 25th, the same day that Jeffrey Modell would have turned 38.
It was like a rebirth, the next Jeffrey. We talked about it when we lost Jeffrey. Maybe we could save the next Jeffrey. The next Jeffreys, maybe there'll be 2 or 5 or 10. We said, okay, we got something going in Wisconsin. We gotta go everywhere.
And eventually, the Secretary of Health, Kathleen Sebelius, she made the decision to recommend that they add SCID. And they did. We were there for the vote. There wasn't a dry eye in the room.
Now Vicki and I are saying, let's pop the champagne. And they say, not so fast. You've got 50 stops to make. This is not a mandate, this is a recommendation. You've got to go to every single state and try to make the case with the state to do newborn screening.
As the Modells continued working to institute newborn screening in all 50 states, Fred left a successful career in the jewelry business so that he and Vicki could focus on the foundation full-time. They were committed to finding and saving the next Jeffreys.
We started to hear from families, other families. And then it occurred to the two of us, maybe this is bigger than this obscure 1 in a zillion disease. Maybe it's really more widespread.
For me, it was very therapeutic that I could actually maybe offer a little consolation and most of all, to offer them hope.
And hope was exactly what Andres and Paulina Trevino needed.
With Andy, actually had to be in the hospital for almost 1,000 days from birth. He was in the ICU 3 times, in the operating room 30 times. We spent birthdays, holidays, Thanksgiving, New Year's at the hospital.
They were just telling us that it was bad luck.
By the time he was 1, Andy Trevino had endured several near-fatal illnesses. The mystery of why he got sick would take his family from Mexico City to Boston Children's Hospital, where they finally got an answer. Andy was diagnosed with a type of primary immune deficiency. Although some of the symptoms of his disease were treatable, all of the children before him, diagnosed with this specific gene abnormality, were either seriously ill or had died.
Andy kept having some infections, and it was in one of those hospitalizations when one of the doctors told us, "Hey, have you been in touch with Vicki and Fred Modell?" And they were actually gonna be there at Boston Children's that weekend. It was gonna be a family event at the hospital.
We noticed that there was a couple with a little boy, and he was in like a red wagon. So Fred and I walked over to the family, and we said, "Please come join us and bring your little boy with you."
I was so surprised to see these healthy, happy kids playing outside, and I just couldn't believe that they had a primary immune deficiency, and my son was the only one that looked sick.
Andy was very, very ill, and so their lives were really turned upside down. My advice to them was to stay in Boston until Andy could be saved, hopefully.
They were coaching us, they were sort of giving us insider information, and they actually were the first ones to ever tell us the word transplantation. They said, "So have your doctors told you about transplantation? What are you doing next? You have a diagnosis, what's next?"
Doctors recommended a stem cell transplant. That would mean taking the bone marrow from a healthy matched donor to provide new immune stem cells to replace the white blood cells in Andy's broken immune system.
Stem cell transplantation is one of the most challenging things that we can offer a family. It represents a radical opportunity for a cure.
But there was a major problem. They couldn't find a match for Andy.
We knew that if Andy was going to have a chance at a long life, that we had to consider some risks.
He came to us with this option, which at first really sounded like science fiction. Dr. Orange told us the option for you is to have another baby, to find a compatible brother or sister. And after birth, we can use the umbilical cord stem cells to cure Andy, to replace the defective cells with healthy ones. So as soon as he explained that, I remember Paulina's face just light up, and she actually turned back to Dr. and said, "Well, we're gonna have twins. Let's do this." We had to try it.
I was very excited to hear that I was pregnant. I knew I was pregnant with a girl. I knew that she was 100% matched with Andy. He was 4 years old when she was born.
Sofia Trevino was born on March 14, 2004. Doctors would need cells from her umbilical cord and bone marrow in order to give Andy a chance at survival. It was a risky procedure to extract the marrow from a baby, but the Trevinos trusted the doctors with both of their children.
This is a very difficult process. The entirety of the broken immune system is wiped out.
transplant is a very difficult procedure because you're replacing the defective cells with new ones. It involves chemotherapy.
You are just waiting, you know, every day they will come to the room and draw blood. He was in a very dangerous situation.
It's not a easy, fast race. It's a marathon. It takes time. You wait about 100 days for official, they call it engraftment, when the cells really reach the bone marrow and start producing all the new cells. And he was recuperating from transplant. It was the winter.
I had left the hospital and moved to my position at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
However, we stayed in touch and he visited and he brought a gift.
I brought him a snow globe of Boston. And I said to him, Andy, you shake this. You see the snow. When you look out the window and you see the snow in Boston, you'll be cured.
I think it was a blizzard. That's the day that Andy engrafted, which was just magical.
The journeys that you embark upon on patients with primary immune deficiency are lifelong. Some of them have amazing outcomes, some of them have tragic outcomes. But they're journeys of meaning and substance. They're journeys of hope and optimism. And you carry them with you forever.
If your child is sick over and over again.
To create awareness, in 2004, the foundation started a public service awareness campaign.
Visit us at info4pi.org.
Happy birthday to you.
An estimated 6 million people worldwide are affected by a form of this disease. But most families don't know about the danger lurking inside their children. The disease can be elusive, masquerading as seemingly benign but frequent infections, or as scary, opportunistic ones. The foundation was also expanding on physician education, raising money and offering grants so doctors could attend conferences all over the world.
There is a very big benefit to send younger doctors to conferences so that they can learn all the newest research, all the newest techniques in care. And this way, we are educating younger doctors to grow up to be immunologists. So Fred and I, personally meet them, and we reward them with grants and other types of awards to encourage them to stay in the field. It's very important.
If you tell other people what they've done, they will get inspired. They put primary immunodeficiencies in the entire map of this world.
What we've learned in the past 20, 30 years is that immunodeficiency doesn't only start or is diagnosed in babies, but it could be, for the first time, identified in adults. We're learning all the time. That's the beauty of this field. You're constantly learning something new.
Fred and I have been on a very long, winding, often pioneering, incredible journey for more than 30 years.
Meeting Vicki and Fred has been very important. We have been in touch with many colleagues throughout the world who have had a lot of expertise in this field, and this facilitated significantly the work we are doing.
They are the greatest contribution to immunology. Nobody ever did this in any other specialty. Vicki and Fred, I heard their story. It was really, really touching. How did they change this painful experience to a wonderful thing? This is the most wonderful thing you could do. You can help so many people.
When I first met Fred and Vicki Modell, I was 7 years old. They were having an event at Boston Children's Hospital, and they told me that they were there to help, that they had this foundation, and that they would like to help me and kids like me and my family deal with the condition.
The Jeffrey Modell Foundation means family to me. Meeting Fred and Vicki is one of those moments where I look back as one of the most pivotal moments in my life.
The three of us, Jason, Scott, and I, met for the first time at that gala, and we were all about the same age in our little tuxedos. Vicki had perhaps the biggest smile of anyone I'd seen at that point, and Fred too. Like, they were both, I remember Fred being very loud and very smiley, and this was also my first time meeting a New Yorker.
After meeting at the Foundation's annual gala, Scott McGuire, Jason Schumann, and Joseph Graziano benefited from something Jeffrey never had, a support network of other children with this disease.
Each of us came from such a different background and looked at life from such a different lens, but there was this like one common thread that brought us together, and it just made us all really connect on a deep level.
I feel that I'm different than other kids, and some kids don't like me because I have a disease.
This idea of I get sick more than everybody else, I'm missing out on opportunities, and I may die, at a really young age, and that was a really scary feeling.
Back then, it wasn't as known. There wasn't as much awareness as there is today. And having the interaction with other kids who have the same illness that I do helped a lot with that. But there was still a little bit of residual fear just because of the uncertainty.
I remember after some little illness, just curling up next to my mom and just crying with her for a little while. The major effect of this illness on me was that I started to realize at a very young age that this life is passing, that we only have so much time here.
I was diagnosed with primary immunodeficiency at 5 months of age. It's hard, and I'm lucky I was diagnosed early.
The next 8 years really helped define me as a human being. They really gave me the ability to open up my wings and help represent JMF.
It's just really hard because when you're a kid and you look at all the other kids playing and having fun when you're in the hospital, you really don't feel like
They explained about what happened to Jeffrey, which was scary to us, I'm gonna be honest. They said, don't look back at what happened to Jeffrey. Just keep looking forwards. Keep your eye on the ball.
Now we could do something to bring these people together. Fred and I let Jeffrey be whatever he wanted to be. We let him dream about the future, like all children should dream. The only thing is, I never saw him as an adult in my eyes, in my mind. I never pictured him bigger than, let's say, 15 years old, because I guess I never thought he'd live to be an adult.
Today, the three sick boys are three healthy men, each of them spreading the lessons they learned from their challenging childhoods in their own unique way.
One of the things that I've been able to see in working with Vicki and Fred is the work that they do is to provide people with a chance to live. And that is beautiful, no matter where it's found.
What they taught me and what the experiences growing up taught me is that my goal in life is to give people the confidence and the tools to go out and achieve what they want to.
As children, we had to deal with adversity early in life, and that, obviously poses itself a challenge, but it's been a blessing in the sense that it helped make us who we are today. And I've decided that I wanted to do what I can for people medically and help them when they're going through a tough time. What we went through has not only helped us become who we are today, but it's also given us tools that we can use to make us better at what we do.
By 2010, the Modells were expanding on one of their earliest accomplishments, centers that could diagnose, treat, and research the disease, a global network of Jeffrey Modell centers.
Vicki and I said to each other, what would Jeffrey say? I mean, this is unbelievable. Centers all over the world now.
Stockholm and Paris, and then Germany, and then Italy, and then Spain, and then we went to the Middle East.
We did a Middle East conference, and we brought these physicians and sat them in a U-shaped table to just talk to one another. It really wasn't about the foundation, it was just about them, and having them talk and find ways to work together. No politics in medicine, as we say.
We sat around the table like it was like a peace meeting, and we are all doctors, not politicians, but people and doctors with our hands are making the peace.
At Sheba Medical Center in Israel, the Jeffrey Modell Center opened in 2010 and took on a role beyond treating the disease.
Dr. Somek pulled me aside and said, I see that you have a nice relationship with Palestine. He said, we have the technology. We can transplant these babies and cure them. They have the patience.
Well, this is the first time that I succeeded and crossed the checkpoint. It's really exciting. Especially this is the first time that I visit Tel Aviv since my early childhood. It's exciting to cross the borders to the western part, and it's nice. Hi, Raz. How are you?
How are you, Steve? One of the goals of this hospital was to keep a connection, to keep a bridge between Palestinian and Israeli through hospitals. I would say that 60 or 70% of my patients are Palestinian. This is a very great collaboration, and it's more than that, it's seeing each other, looking in his eyes, knowing him, and then barriers are falling down.
Whenever I refer any patient to him, I ask the patient when he comes back, how was your visit? All of them say, everything is outstanding. At the end, sick babies, sick children are being helped.
She spent a lot of her age in the hospitals, here and in Gaza. She suffered a lot.
This is her name is Sana, and she has immunodeficiency.
Wonderful, fantastic doctor. He take care of all the patients. He treat very kindly and lovely with all of us. She loves him very much.
You have a lot of courage, don't you?
Courage.
Yes, strong.
A lot of courage.
One of the goals that I've learned from Fred and Vicki Modell is to treat one at a time. So, I cannot influence the whole world and to treat all patients, but, I have to treat patients under my care, one at a time.
Sometimes today when we're visiting a medical center and I see the mothers on the floor with the children, I still have this terrible feeling of what I felt like. So I always make a point to say hello to all of them and give them a little tap on their shoulder, and they don't know what I went through. But I think they can see it in my eyes that I do know what they're going through. We wish your son good health.
And the importance of this global reach is that the collaboration between members of the network, I think, is something we're very, very proud of.
Over the last 30 years, collaboration between doctors and scientists, like the ones in Israel, have yielded many of the advances in fighting this disease.
By the way, all of the things that I'm talking about and showing you, they are all yours to have and to use if you see. And we say, we'll support you, but when you don't share, we stop supporting. Together, let's keep going. Thank you very much.
Now we have learned how to identify these genes, these defects. We have about 350 genes now that cause primary immune deficiency, and we are not at the end. I would guess it probably doubles. We have probably about a 90–95% cure, especially if they have a matched sibling.
On our unit, we have a little baby boy, and he's 10 days out from his bone marrow transplant. And his grandmother greeted me like a long-lost friend. 25 years ago, I treated her son, this little boy's uncle, and he didn't survive. And Grandma said to me, "Do you remember that when you treated my son, you said there's a 20 to 30% chance this will be successful?" And it wasn't. And now you're telling my daughter that there's a 95% chance this is going to be successful? And I think that says it all in a way.
Out of tragedy, Vicki and Fred Modell have removed the mystery of this illness, raising over $500 million to bring awareness and answers.
Some people give lip service to, oh, we need to start a foundation, and then maybe it works for a few years, but they are relentless and fearless.
The legacy is that primary immune deficiency, that it won't exist anymore, that children won't have to be sick and ask, why am I always sick? Why am I always at the doctor? And I think that's the legacy that Vicki and Fred are looking for. It's what they promised Jeffrey.
Jeffrey's stories will be rare.
The Jeffrey Modell Foundation has evolved into a global network with 781 expert physicians at 356 academic medical institutions in 273 cities, 86 countries, spanning 6 continents. They helped institute newborn screening in Israel, Taiwan, and Norway. And in 2018, after more than 10 years of trying, newborn screening for SCID became a reality in all 50 states. It was the first new disease to be added to the newborn screening test in 9 years. To date, over 25 million babies have been screened for SCID.
Vicki and Fred have really built an empire, but at the end of the day, it's a husband and wife love, real love. They've had some obvious heartache in their life. You hear a lot of stories where it pulls people apart. For whatever reason, those two became 10 times closer, and it's really, really beautiful to see.
The night before their wedding, Fred promised his new bride that their enduring love would conquer any challenges. But he couldn't have predicted how their love would be tested. But ultimately, their love for their son and for each other would transform their tragedy. Together, they did something.
I think he's here. I think he's sitting here in my office, watching everything I do, which he always did, and telling us to do something and to do something more. That we have saved at least one life. That gives us great satisfaction.
I mean, every day is gratifying. We meet families, we meet children, we meet the doctors, we see babies cured. It's all positive. I don't dwell on the other. I have wonderful memories with Jeffrey. I can't wait to help the next family. I just can't wait.
My name is Jeffrey Modell, and I love you. Signing off another portion of Jeff's Plane Ride. Thank you.
street.